giving it. Truly, a lot of people, they shouldn't want that. So they want. Alright? Let's finish up this paragraph. This little bit, he brings the things he was doing, remember the time when I talked about David Oven, this way jumping is also about David Oven, the actor, the Lord Israel, because God doesn't see sin like God. He doesn't see misconduct like Christ. Hashem kept him, no, the truth knows all. Hashem is with him, and the truth, the law of the truth, there you go, Hashem. And that was the bad truth, the trumpets. Hashem Chorah, you see, Hashem says, Hashem. Really? Because we're going to look at sins. No muscle upon the issue of you know, Chazal tell us that you can't fit favoritism. It just doesn't look at the sins of Jews. Chazal says, Chazal honor should pull over because you go to Rashi. The son says, just move out there. You just let sins go. If you say that, the Chul, he doesn't bring it in. It's very bad if you say that. You're not a Rashi. There is a din, there's a dying. Achein, what does it mean? This is a Chassidish language. Achein Kavana, Achein Gilish. The Chassid is really referring to this idea of the jumping. I'll never go say it, which is a world say Shem Makor is his name Hashem. Makor is his name, which we talk about this next week. And he says, Zokon when you're Chaim, then you can be Zokon in a special Madrid. Shem Kach, because you're at that Madrid, it's in Spain, will give you of the that's a question of emotion as you jumps into the regular process. Shem, why? Shem Shach, Hashem sees you person who comes directly to the first program. It's a first program. True as a melech and bow, and therefore we bring the trumpet after the king with him. And Yishum Kach Zochar Nesias Chaim. Now you have a special Nesias Chaim. And when you're Nesias Chaim, then you jump on Drake. This kid, he always I was found. For some reason I don't know why. He wasn't too big. Somehow I didn't get in trouble now. So the teacher's always been peak leader. He's not acting so good, but you're like, you know, Chaim. That's how I got out of a lot of trouble. Whatever it is. That's what it is. A person can find pain on him, which we'll discuss next week. Because Lord doesn't look at all the stuff. A person can strive, jump right to it. Wow, I've got it. Huh? I've got it. It's always like that. Today it's on.
Second time. Yeah, he's always changed.
Thank the partners of the year, sponsoring the shir, the Ilu Nishmas of Gedalia and Reb Shimon, the Shom Shat Maliyah, from the Shem Simcha Nachas and Bracha.
Can I ask you to add one name I haven't changed to do it officially? Azriel Simcha Chaim.
Azriel Simcha Chaim.
Ben Avraham Moshe, my brother.
Moshe, Jay's brother.
Yurtzeit of Shabbos.
Yurtzeit of Shabbos, Heilig and Shom Shat Maliyah, and the whole family of Simcha Nachas and Bracha.
Thank you.
Okay. on that note of simcha, we were in the middle of the Maimer before the summer. We're in the middle of the Maimer on simcha on page Kuf Nun Tes. We'll go back a couple of lines to Pez Vav on Kuf Nun Ches, just to enter back into the limud. Simcha of joy. We're going to learn maybe one or two more mamarim, and then I have a cheshik to go back to learning Chassidus insights. I'm not sure yet which we'll do. I'm thinking about some Chabad mamarim. I'll grab you with a Shabbat. We'll learn a few more mamarim. But simcha we can't interrupt in the middle of the simcha. So on page Kuf Nun Ches, we'll return a little bit just to read those few sentences from Siv Vav. At this point in the Maimer, the Mechaber is talking about those thoughts that are making it difficult for us to feel simcha in our lives, the ma'akrim, the ikuvim that hold back the simcha in our lives, and how we are to overcome those ikuvim. So v'hine lefama ma'yetzer rosh ha'adam hatzliach l'smach b'ktsas azay machnis also l'tchusha she'enu hatzliach klal. This is a very, very common thing. We go through this all the time. When a person is having a little bit of hatzlacha in something good, he's successful in something, particularly in his avodas Hashem. The davening went a little bit better. The learning is going a little bit better. Whatever it is, something is going a little bit better. And then the Yetzer Hara comes, and is machnas also t'chusha she'enu hatzliach klal. Instead of being besimcha with a little bit, and remembering Rabbi Nachman's slogan, a bissel is like good, that a little bit is also good. Instead of being besimcha with a little bit that you had, a little bit of hatzlacha, instead the HR comes and he makes nothing of any of it. And the person has a tchusha she'enu hatzliach klal. Starts to compare himself to others. He thinks about how it could have been, how it should have been. This is nothing where I should be holding. All of these thoughts. So instead of being besimcha with a little bit, he's not besimcha at all. And it seems to him that he's not making any progress at all. Although he is making progress, small progress, and that's fine. But the dimion is that he's not making any progress. Like they say, who writes and of course the strategy of the other side is always to bring a person to sadness. And when a person is batzvus, then whatever little bit of progress he's been making, it falls apart. That's what happens when a person is depressed or sad. There's the eitz of everything, but the eitzahi is lahikanis lahava yir udvekas. The eitzah is to enter into a place of ahava, of yira and dvekas b'Hashem, and to go into that place to remember what is it that Hashem is happy with, and what Hashem has defined as tov, as good. And Hashem Baruch's lexicon in his dictionary, a bissel is like good. A little bit is good. A little bit is good. So when you go into that place of what Hashem Baruch thinks, in a real way, in a healthy way, the way Hashem's perspective is understood by the tzaddikim amitim, by the tzaddikim pnimiyim, then the person, ksheyesh adam yir v'havad v'ekes Hashem Baruch, as a lo yeh lo atzvus v'chalishes das miklum, and he's not going to have atzvus v'chalishes das miklum, because that is atzvus, sadness, is the most distasteful thing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A person who loves Hashem, who is dovuk to Hashem, knows that there's nothing that's worse than atzvus, and knows that from Hashem's perspective, a little bit of good is good. B'chol pam, page Kuf Nun Tes, shehudi rosh yesh lo chalishus hadas v'tzar. Whenever whatever person feels a chalishus hadas, some tsar, some upset, Yeder Shutzarach Likanis B'Yeser says, it means that Hashem is saying to him, he has to return in a stronger way, Lahava V'Yiru Udveikus Hashem's Baruch, into Hashem's eyes, into Hashem's way of thinking, into that connection that one has with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ashlo Yafriya Lo Shum Chayso Hatzlacha, to the point that he will not be bothered by anything that's called a lack of Hatzlacha or less Hatzlacha. V'yoser Omek, Yikon is Tamil Bittel. Now we learned the Maimon Bittel. That's the main avoda of a chassid, is the avoda of Bittel. And when a person is in that place, so he gives himself, he surrenders himself entirely to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's his greatest simcha in the world. And in that place of Bittel, this does not mean that the person doesn't try hard to succeed. We always have to try hard to succeed and to do well. But when a person is in this place of Dveikus B'Hashem and Bittul to Hashem, then even if what he was hoping to accomplish, he wanted to finish that Masechta by a certain time, he wanted to reach a certain Madrega in the Tikkun HaMidas, whatever it is, and Lois Kai Moshiach, and what he wanted, what he was aspiring to, did not turn out. He didn't reach that. Now, obviously, he needs to think and to make a cheshbon nefesh and to identify issues that could be having to do with laziness, and so on and so forth. But the mitzvah is that Hashem had a different plan for him. The only thing a person can do is to try to work on himself. But whom is batla elo b'simcha, and the person then is misbatla b'simcha. Okay, so he didn't accomplish that. He's misbatla to Hashem's will b'simcha, and as far as his own avoda, to look with his cheshbon and nefesh to see what things he can work on to improve, and that's all. V'harbe ovdei Hashem chayshim al atzmam, and there are many ovdei Hashem that they're constantly like evaluating themselves. Hayim avodasam kshura imlav. They're constantly thinking: is my avoda good or is it not good? Am I successful? Am I not successful? And this is something that one sees in many of the Musar Svarim, to live in a constant state of cheshbon nefesh. But of course, there's something to that. And we have to be very careful not to ignore making a cheshbon nefesh at specific times, but to be measuring, to evaluating oneself all the time. Im atzlichim Allah, im olam Allah. Am I ascending? And they in the Svarim usually see that they'll compare this to a business person. That any business person that's not constantly looking over the books and checking his inventory and going over everything, that business person is not going to succeed in his business. That's a very common and popular moshel that's found in many of the Musar Svarim. Again, there's always truth, but in the right measure. But when a person is living in that way all the time, of taking spiritual inventory of where he is, and he lives in that all the time during the day, and especially it comes when a person is learning or a person is davening. That's for sure a siman that it's something which is coming from the other side. It's another thing to make a cheshbon nefesh when you say Kriya Shema Lamita, to make a cheshbon nefesh about the day, or it's Erev Shabbos, before Shabbos. It's a little bit cheshbon nefesh. There are times, like we've learned that, and the Tanya explains, but not to have all the time these cheshbonos. And because when he sees Vaydei Zeh, generally a person sees that when you live in that way, with these in a perpetual state of cheshbonos, that it does not improve a person's avodas Hashem. They say just the opposite. Shoyla aleim atzvus. The people who live bichlal, the people who live in constant cheshbonos. Now that so they have this bracha we have that's called ways. So it's a very good thing. You could find your way around. But we never had that until a few years ago. The way that it always was with driving, there was always certain guys that they make a million cheshbonis about how many stop signs there are to get to the other place. And if you go this way, there's one less red light. And if you go the other way, there are 2 stop signs. You know, I had a friend like that. He had there are 7 stop signs between here and Queens Boulevard. But if you go around the other way, there are only 6. Like the people, their whole life is reckoning. And they're usually miserable people. So mostly very, very miserable people. They're in a constant state of reckoning. Cheshbonis, everything's a cheshbon. It's very close to marshchara, to depression, and that whole way of living, pinklichkeit, cheshbonis and counting and reckoning. Yeah, it has to be done, but it has to be at a certain time. Otherwise, a person should live open, not in such a way, everything. I thought I had a friend of mine that there was a time many, many years ago, there was a problem, the oil embargo and stuff like that, and he never recuperated from it, so he used to go for gas. So he would stop at the gas station, he would ask for 50 cents, he would ask the guy to give 50 cents, because he didn't want to, because his father made him pay for his own gas. So he didn't want to pay for more gas than he needed. So he was always with a cheshbon, and it was always like right by empty. And then he said, we could still go like to school. I just need 50 cents worth. It's a certain type of a life that suffocates and that destroys. And people live that way with their kids, with everything. And you have, again, in the right way, it's healthy. But to see how many calories and I was over by 5 calories, or to weigh themselves every day. It's a certain, to be healthy and to keep a cheshbon, of course, but to live in a reckoning it wrecks a person's life. It doesn't come out always like that with the cheshbon. To check, am I matzlichim Allah, am I matzlichim, am I not matzlichim, olam Allah, am I going up my avodas Hashem, am I going down? Again, so you have the Elul is again more of a time of cheshbon. Even then, it has to be in the right way, in besimcha, come to Hashem Tshuva and so on. But because the truth of the matter is, when it comes to avodas Hashem, kol echad nitzav adayin rachok. You're always going to come up behind. When any cheshbon that you make in your being a Jew, it's always going to be at the end when you add up all the things that come to the final thing and says Sach HaKol, I could be doing a lot better. If you're an honest and humble person, it's always going to be that I'm so much further than I was hoping to be. As opposed to a different way of making cheshbon, which is a famous thing I've mentioned many times over the years, but with the Baal Tanya had a chassid that, I forgot his name, that he was in the lumber business. He had a big business, and once one of the chassidim told us to Alter Rebbe that he saw that this rich guy, the lumber guy, was sitting there at the end of the month, and he had all the numbers of every how much he made, his profits, whatever. And then he had a thing, and it says Sach HaKol, and he wrote Ein Od Milvado. It says Sach HaKol. That doesn't mean he didn't also add the numbers, but he stopped for a minute, and he was in that place of Ein Od Milvado. Otherwise, Kol Echad Nitzav Adayin Rachok. You go your whole life depressed because every time you make the cheshbon, it comes out that you're far away. Because no matter what you've done, you're always going to be far away. And the simcha that you have, because it's a little bit better than last time, it doesn't last long. Because the Yitzhak comes right away and says, that's all you could do. That's the best you could do. You couldn't do better than that. Like if you're trying to concentrate during davening, and you worked on one little piece of davening, and you had a good davening, you had a good day or a good week. You were concentrating on that little part of davening, and you were thinking about the words, and it was good. But then Yitzhak will always say, it's a whole big siddur, and you're able to do 3 lines. That's like your whole kavanah. And then for sure you're going to see something in some sefer that says that, if you don't daven with a hav and yira, your tefillas don't ascend. And you'll see that, and then say, I don't daven with a hav, I don't daven with yira, with my tefillas don't go anywhere, and so on. However, when a yid is zeicha to a life of Eino Novado. But the Indian is not how you feel and how you look and building yourself up and what have you accomplished and where are you holding, but the avodah is to serve Hashem. When you begin to look at things with God's eyes, Ein Hashem al tzadikim. You begin to look at Hashem with those eyes, the way that Hashem sees things, not the way that you see. A person goes to that place of Hamelech, and he thinks about his whole life is just to be a kli, to be a vessel, a kli, the gilui oirai, to reveal Hashem's light, b'yesesais, as much as possible, just to be a kli. L'zehu kaisei, to be a kli. Memela ein lo pnai lasak ba'atzma. Memela, the person doesn't have time lasak ba'atzma. Like I also told you in the past that I heard from my Rebbe from Rabbi Yosef Soloveitchik that he was once learning someplace, and there was a upstairs in that Beis Medrash there was some balmusa, some musanik that would go upstairs. The Briskers didn't care so much of that. There was some musanik that was upstairs, and Rabbi Yosef said that he was learning downstairs, and you'd hear this guy like for hours screaming, "Ich bin a gornish, ich bin a rasha, I'm nothing, I'm a rasha, I'm this, I'm horrible," and the way Rav Soloveitchik said over, he was imitating him, and he went, ich, me, I. And Rav Soloveitchik said, I never heard such an egomaniac in my life. I. Why don't you come down and learn a little bit? I, me, I'm worthless, I'm this, I'm that, I'm a garnish, I'm a rush, I'm this. It's an egomaniac. A person's a healthy Oved Hashem, ein lo pnai lasik ba'atzmo. He's too busy learning and davening and doing mitzvahs to be making cheshbonis about where am I holding. Lasik ba'atzmo, ima kol etzlo kishur. Is everything perfect? Is everything kishur? Is everything the right way? Again, not to make a mistake, the person has to keep Shulchan Aruch and to be careful, and that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about an excessive way of doing this. And the same thing when it comes to Gashmis, not to live a life also that pinklichkeit of everything, to live in that mahalach, the yekishkeit and the pinklichkeit and everything, every single thing. I'm not talking about you, Moshe. You're Polish, you're not really German. You're a Polisher that lived in Germany, so that's not the same. So that pinklichkeit makes for more schreir and asvus, and it makes the wives crazy, it makes the children mashigah, and it's a whole life of pinklichkeit and every single thing. And persons also, when it comes to with money, even if it's hard for a person with the money to everything with that, it's the same thing. Living in that everything with the cheshbon, being cheap and stingy, and hard with everything. It's everything with the cheshbon. Ki bor habitl. Now this is a hard sentence because unless one understands what bitl is and is learning this Svarim HaKadoshim, it can be misunderstood. Ki bor habitl ein nafki minim ho adam gadol katan. In light of bitl to Hashem, doesn't make a difference if I'm considered to be an Adam Gadol and I'm an Adam Katan. It's not about me. It's about doing my best to just be a Kli to serve Hashem. Whether people think I'm a Gadol, I am a Gadol, I'm a Katan, it's an Afkimina, a Gadol or a Katan. So, am I going, where am I now holding in my Avodas Hashem? Am I higher than I used to be? Am I lower than I used to be? Allah. These are all these cheshbainas. Ela kol ha'es, a person who lives in the or of bittul, kol ha'es, all of his life, always. What he's thinking about the whole time is or pnei melech chaim. What can I do now to give nachasur to Hashem, to bring a smile to Hashem's face? Not to do all of these cheshbainas. Also lahargish es mitzias Hashem's bar. And in his mind, he's not measuring things. He's just also to feel the Metzias of Hashem, Lus Anigalov, and to delight in that connection to Kadosh Baruch Hu. L'galoisai ba'olam, and to be Megala Hashem in the world, Lefi Ech Hashem is Baruch writes, and not how you want, and what makes you feel good, and what makes you look special, but according to what Hashem wants of you, the best you can do at this moment. And if the best is a lot, then do that. And the best that you can do at the moment is a little, then do a little. But whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants of you at that moment in your life. Zehu. Again, you have to be very, very, very strong with this. That even though, of course, a person has to aspire and he has to work hard. This year gave He has to work very hard. This year gave and v'gam la'aseh b'cheshbon nefesh b'zman musuyim b'yom, and to take a certain part of the day. Like I said, it's usually good when it's never ever good when you have thoughts of where you're holding, when you're davening or where you're learning and you're just busy working. That's not a good time. Again, you set aside a few minutes. Usually it's best by Kriyash Malamita, but you set aside a few minutes to make a cheshbon. Not that you're in that way of thinking and it comes upon you and you drive it away when you start having these machshavas. But it's Zman Musuyim B'yom, a certain time of the day. And as you see in the note down below, in and during that time, when you make the cheshbon, you should try to think of some practical things that you could do to improve. That's not what you do when you have these thoughts during davening. Whenever you have these thoughts, they attack you, or it's during davening, you never come up with practical ways of improving. You just get upset. It never helps you. It doesn't lead to any tshuva. When you live in that way, it doesn't lead to tshuva. What does lead to tshuva is when you set aside a time to make a cheshbon, set aside a time and you have a specific time, whatever it is, 10 minutes. You set aside a time and you think about it in a rational way, not that it overcomes you. You think about it and you could say you're sorry to Hashem, whatever it is, and in the Kriyash Malamita, especially at the Arizal, you have vidui, you say vidui, and then you come up, you try to think of what can I do practically and help, or ask Hashem to help me practically. What could I do to try to work on this, that it should become better? That's you do tshuva, as opposed to just being in a bad mood, being upset, not doing anything about it, just upset. You walk around upset. That's the same thing. It's the same thing with the Indian that we're learning the last few years by Chavos Yosef Tzad when it comes to Pagam HaBris. Instead, the person gets all depressed and he loses his whole chiyas and his happiness. Instead of making a cheshbon and doing tshuva, thinking of things to become better in a rational way. That's all. That's all Hashem wants, and that's what brings the tshuva. Being in a bad mood doesn't do anything. It doesn't bring to any tshuva. No tshuva comes from bad moods. Before you make the cheshbon nefesh, and after the cheshbon nefesh, you have to concentrate on bittul. On bittul to Hashem and Einum Levado. I'm a kli to serve Hashem. It's not about me. It's about what can I do to serve Hamelech and to give nachas ruach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Not how I feel, not how I appear, not what people think of me. Ad sheberoiv hazman, to the point that most of the time of a person's day, Yehodam osik b'or ha'eloki. The person is osik, he's busy with or ha'eloki. Whether he's learning or davening, he's at work, he does whatever he's supposed to be doing, b'or ha'eloki. B'chol eis, kakosov yismach yisrael b'yosef. That's what Hashem wants. Yismach yisrael b'yosef, that we should rejoice. Yismach yisrael b'yosef. B'nei sin yagilu b'malkam. That Jews, Yismach Yisrael B'Yosef, that Jews are happy with Hashem who made them, and rejoice in Hashem, and B'nei Tzion Yagilu B'Malkam, and we rejoice, we're B'Simcha in our King. B'nei Tzion Yagilu B'Malkam, as people who are busy in doing the Ratzon Hashem to the best that we can do, that's all. B'nei Tzion Yagilu B'Malkam. Ubezeh lo yipol. If you live this way, you're not going to have the feelings in your readers. Ubezeh lo yipol. Of course, it sounds simple when you read this, but it's an avodah. It's a tremendous avodah. Ubezeh lo yipol. Now, another obstruction to Simcha is regarding the future. Yeyush miha osid. L'famim hayetza machnes b'adam zayin. L'famim hayetza machnes b'adam machshavas yeyush v'atzvus b'glal ha'osid. There are times that the Yetzer brings a person to thoughts of yeyush, of discouragement and atzvus, sadness because of the future. This is also all the time. This is very, very, very common. Why it's a newsman right now. It's Elul. What are you going to start to take upon yourself? You're going to learn this Gemara. You're going to learn those Mishnayos. You're going to learn something in Tanakh. You're going to take upon yourself some Sefer, or to do Shnai Mikra Targum, or whatever it might be. Chumash Rashi. You're never going to finish it. You've done this 1,000 times. You've done this. You started the year off with this plan and that plan. You have to be normal and healthy plans, but even the ones that were good plans, it doesn't work out. So why should you bother even starting? Why even go to the base medrash or sit down and open the sefer? Start. Hello, mimela. You're never going to finish the last liach. That's a very, very strong nusach of the Eitzar. One of the strategies that people use is the whole thing of making a siyum, and I want to be part of a siyum, and I'm going to be like everybody else and be part of the siyum, which is for many people, it's a very helpful motivation. But for many, many others, it could be more. It doesn't work at all. It's just the opposite. When they see that they're not going to be heading towards the siyum, just stop learning. I'm not making it to MetLife, on what year, whatever the next one. I'm not making it to MetLife. It's not going. So why should I bother? That's it. Because the goal was a certain. Which you see a lot in the books. They'll talk about this goal. There's a goal, and to make a goal, and to have that, and to make it's a whole culture of a goal-oriented way of Yiddishkeit and way of learning, which is the deepest level is not a bichlal in this mahalach at all. But that whole thing of it does help certain people. It helps a lot of people, but for many people it's just the opposite. Instead of sitting and having a tremendous tanuk, whatever I could learn today, and being besimcha with what I'm learning today, if the person doesn't reach that goal of what he's supposed to, and all the learning come out now, you hear publicly is about this mahalach. Which again, I'm not criticizing Chas v'Shalom. It's very, very useful, and it works. It does great things for a lot of people that otherwise wouldn't be learning at all, because we've been trained from the earliest time. We've been trained, especially older generation, been trained very, very much to be goal oriented, and that's in business and everything is achieving. The gold medal to achieve. So that mentality of achievement, which is very much connected to what Rav Soloveitchik was saying, being an egomaniac. So that thing of achievement is the way that we were mostly raised in that way. Yeah, that's how we were raised, to achieve. And again, there's something very chashuv about that. But when your simchas achayim depends upon reaching those goals, and very often, as it happens in life, the goals were to begin with not really reasonable. Very often, not. Could be it was your father's goal or your Rebbe's goal, but not yours. So that wasn't necessarily something that was reasonable that you would reach. Or even if it was, there are things that came up in life that make it difficult for you, or you weren't able to. And the impact that can have on you, the negative impact that can have on you, could be devastating, and it often is. And the person just loses a cheshek. So we're we're raised in a society of achievement. Not so much nowadays, but the older generation was very much raised in that mahalach of achievement. And with all the brachas that come with that, there are side effects, and there are casualties, and there are lots of Jews that gave up, and people are limping, not only in ruchnius things, in gashmius things as well. The worst thing a person could be called, by his wife is you're a lo yuslach. That's the worst thing that a wife could say to a husband is you're a lo yuslach. Or in English, whatever, you're a failure. Lo yuslach. It's a terrible title to have. It's a terrible T-shirt to wear, sweatshirt, lo yuslach. Lo yuslach. It's worse than saying eno masliach, which means you're not succeeding. A lo yutzlach means you will never succeed. Lo yutzlach, and your whole mitzias is you're lo yutzlach. And there are many people you could see when you talk to somebody, you could tell after a few minutes if he's in that place of a lo yutzlach. He's always a victim. It's always not working. It doesn't matter. He can't do. He's sad. It's this, that. It's a certain gloominess and a darkness. The person lives in that cloud of lo yuslichkeit. It's a terrible, terrible world. So the Yetzer comes and says, what should you bother starting? You're not going to make it to the end. You're not going to make it to the Siyum, or you're not going to end up being the Talmud Chacham. This stuff is being sold all the time in places. You're not going to be the Talmud Chacham. You're not going to be the Goyin. You're not going to have a title in front of your name, Harav, Goyin, Tzadik. You're not going to have that. You're never going to have it. So what do you want to be? Just some other guy, some lo yuslach that learns a little bit? It's not. I was in yeshiva. They thought I was going to be the guy, the next Gadol Hador. So now I'm just stam. So the person stops, just gives up the whole thing. Oh, another strategy of the Yetzer, the other side. Here's another permutation of this. Why should I make an effort to overcome this taiva that I'm having, whether it's for food or for something else? I'm never going to vanquish this taiva. I've tried for years to stop drinking, or to stop smoking, or to stop some overeating. I'm never going to, I've always failed. So I'm never going to overcome this taiva. So the teretz is, why bother? Since I'm never going to be free of it, why should I fight against it? Have I ever thought like that? No. I'm not going to be free of this. Why fight it? Just think how often we fall into that. I'm never going to be free of this, so why fight against it? There's a guy that was telling me yesterday that he loses his temper and he went crazy on people, and he said that's how I am, and so on. And so I said, so try not to. You ready? He's ready. That's his Indian. And why bother? Because every time I've tried to not get angry, at some point I lose it. So I never reached that. I never reached that madrega of not being angry. I'm never free of anger. And you probably won't be. No matter how hard you're working at it, you probably won't be. But it could be a lot better. But I'm never free of it. And since your picture of Hatzlach is never getting angry, or never having this taiva, and if you fail, so then that proves that the Yetzer is right. And again, you'll see in many Svarim also, you'll see that if you're weak in this area, and if you have a failure, it's a siman that you're not a neman, that you're not faithful to your avodah, that you haven't really accomplished, you haven't really done There's a lot of that in the Svarim. Not tell me about that. In the other kind of Svarim, you have a lot of that stuff. A lot. And you could hear a lot of sichot like that, a lot of talks like that, a lot of speeches and drushes along those lines. But it's not coming from Or HaBittul, it's not coming from Pneumius. It's a different kind of a life. Why should you bother having, like I said before, why should you bother working to have some kavana on this one sentence in the Siddur? Why should you bother? You're never ever going to have kavana by the whole davening. Look, your whole life you're trying to have kavana, and you see that no matter what, you always lose. You're trying to think, you always lose it. You can't hold on to kavana. So what are you starting again? Another year, making a whole big deal. Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Hashanah, I'm going to have this year, kavana. So you bought yourself some new siddur and a new way of reading and translations and so on, and helping you, and what's the difference? I've tried all this stuff in the past. The Yitzhar says you've tried this, and your mind wanders anyway. None of these things work for you. You are a lo yuslach by davening. You're a person that does not have kavanah. You don't have kavanah. That's all. Instead of I could have kavanah for this sentence. I could have kavanah for this paragraph or today. No. Why should you bother? Again, he always has a cheshbon. What percentage of davening did I have kavanah and didn't have kavanah? And the way to free oneself and to forget all of these cheshbainis that don't help you in any way, that only hurt you. In order to forget these and to be free of these cheshbainis, is Kamoshe Esbar B'Siv Beis. Shetzarach lo lachshav ela alachshav. The way to be free of this is, as we were saying before, I'm learning throughout the Sefer, is to live only in this moment that I'm in right now. Not am I going to finish this, am I going to perfect this, how in the past I didn't, and how in the past I messed up. None of that stuff. So lo lachshav el halachshav. K'moshe hayom im bekolos hishmo. As the pasuk says, hayom, today. Hayom im bekolos hishmo. Ulahavin, and to understand, today. That's all. That's my avodah is hayom. Ulahavin she'ein kesher ben rege echad l'sheni. And to understand on a deeper level that 1 minute has nothing to do with the other minute. Again, even though you see in 1,000 Svarim, this whole thing that everything is one hemshech, it's one continuum, and if somewhere along the line you messed up, it means that the whole thing was not honest, was not real. There's a lot of stuff like that. It's not, it's not true. Every single second is a different bria altogether. According to Ariya Kodesh, every single second is something that's just completely different than the second before. It's not mechayiv, it's not patrin. It's a totally different minute. Ein kesher ben rega echad l'sheni. V'chol rega she'osem asher tzarich lasos. And if this moment, with this little sentence in the Siddur, I do what I'm supposed to do. I mean, I try to stay focused. Hu mischab l'Hashem yisborach. That's connecting to Hashem. Last minute, I didn't do that. I was dragging around somewhere. And a minute from now, I'm going to also be dragging around somewhere. I'm not going to be there. That was that. That's later. Right now, this is where I am. And right now, I can do this. Right now, I can make this bracha in a good way. I can say a good bracha. I'm in a good place. Right now, I'm going to work on saying this bracha properly. Yeah, but you're never going to end up being a guy that says proper brachas, and you've never been a guy that says proper brachas. What's a shayah? Every minute of life is a completely different world. It's a in the Ariya Kodesh, it's a mamish, a different bria. It's a different creation. Lo shayach. This minute, from then, from before, from later. It's a different thing altogether. The ikr is this moment, right now, the Schabel Hashem Yisborach. The Schabel Hashem Yisborach. Kach shashif elosid. In this way, the aspirations that a person has for the future, next page, Eina Nagas, La Avodah Shalach, doesn't have any effect upon, doesn't in any way damage the Avodah for right now. Ela b'chol rega v'rega, every single moment of a person's life, Hashem Yisborach poseach Pesach. Hashem Yisborach opens for each person a place. How at this moment in your life, l'schar v'imo, you can connect them. At this moment in your life, how you can connect them. Whether it's at work or learning or davening. Hashem Yisborach Pesach, b'chol rega v'rega, Hashem Yisborach Pesach, l'schar v'imo b'rega zeh. So if this moment, I'm able to control my temper, this moment, that's this hayom, right now, this moment, Akash Baruch Hu opened for me at Pesach to give him nachas ruach, that I was in control of myself. Does that mean that I'm never going to lose my temper in the future? I'm going to work on it, but I most likely will. And does it mean that I don't have a whole history of I do. That's not the inyan. The inyan is, what's the Pesach that Hashem is opening for me in my life right now, in this present moment, not to yell at this kid. What's the Pesach right now? What sense does it make to lose out this opportunity? Why should you lose this opportunity? Right now, it's Avodas Hashem. So the way the Yetzer Hara works, it says that's not called Hatzlacha. Hatzlacha is when you never do this, when you never lose your temper. That's called Hatzlacha. So, to be a person that has that minute, that's called the Lo Yutzlach. That's not called Hatzlacha. That's Lo Yutzlach. You're a Lo Yutzlach. The Lo Yutzlachs of the world are the ones who are walking around depressed and empty. Those are Lo Yutzlachs of the world. Vayetzim Mabalbal is Adam, and the Yetzer Hara comes and is Mabalbal, a person, confuses a person. She is tackle al kol havodah kinyan echad. To look at your whole Avodas Hashem as one cheftzah. And if there's a piece that's missing, no good. I set for myself this picture of Avodas Hashem for this day or for this year. This is my picture of Avodas Hashem. And if it didn't work out, if the reality didn't work out with that picture, and there's a piece that broke off, it means the whole thing's fulfilled. The whole thing is worthless. Because this piece that's missing, the whole thing is worthless. You look at everything as being an inyan echad. This person looks at everything as being one cheftzah of Avodas Hashem. That's why it's in constant fear of pieces falling off, and this making a million cheshbonos about how the puzzle looks, because he wants to feel good about himself. He wants to feel that there's something perfect about his avodah. It's simply wrong. It's not right. Avodas Hashem is not one chefetz. It's not one piece. It's not an inyan echad. Every single minute, every single second is a different inyan. He called tachlis ha'avodah advekus b'Hashem Yisborach. When one's tachlis is not, how am I doing? Am I going to Gan Eden or am I going to Gehenna? But one's tachlis is not any of that stuff. One's tachlis is advekus b'Hashem. Yisborach Avinu Harachman. Yisborach was Avinu Harachman, our loving Father. Pasech b'chol rega. And this minute, Avinu Harachman is giving each one of us an opportunity to do something good and to stay away from something that's not good. This minute. L'chol Yehudi, every Jew, his damnus chadosha l'skar v'elu. A new opportunity to get close to him this minute. He's opening up for me a new opportunity to get close to him. Uvemis, and the truth is, when a person is able to be strong in this avoda of hayom, today, now, hayom. When a person is able to be misgaber, v'natzal rega echad karoi, and he uses that moment, karoi, in the right way, he takes advantage of that opening, and he uses that moment in the right way. So that moment the person doesn't yell, he calms himself down, he takes a deep breath, and he talks nicely to the kid. That moment, v'natzal rega echad karoi, or that moment in the siddur where he's able to concentrate on that sentence, he begins to see automatically how more moments are opening up. He begins to see those openings. He begins to see those opportunities of kavanah, not getting angry. He begins to recognize more and more these opportunities. More and more opens up. But even if that doesn't happen, you don't see it's opening up in such a way, more and more. Gam beloiza. Kol tnua toiva. Any good tnua, any gesture, any movement, any tiny little of a tnua that's good, hidavalatzma. It's a separate thing. It's not. I don't look at my Rosh Hashem as being one inyan. I look at every single moment being its own inyan. Hidavalatzma. So right now, I made a good bracha. Hashem samech, Hashem's bracha. I made Hashem happy. Right now, I was misgaber on a thought that's not good, on something that's not nice. I was misgaber that thought. I'm never going to have. I don't mind, but I know that my mind has all kinds of stuff. I know that I'm not going to have, a good. During the day, something's going to go wrong. This moment I was misgaber not to look at something I shouldn't have looked at, and to be mesamech Hashem's baruch. That's when you're living a life of Biltul to Hashem and being over Hashem, as opposed to the egomaniac that Rav Soloveitchik was talking about up in the cellar there in the shul. That's when you're being an Oived Hashem. That's an Oived Hashem. That's Avodas Hashem. Hashem is Samech, Hashem is Mischaber Yito. That's the tachlis of our avodah.